In the early hours of July 30th, 1749, the streets of Spain fell silent. But in the shadows, soldiers crept into the homes of thousands of Romani families. Within hours, entire communities were torn apart, husbands dragged away, mothers separated from their children, and an entire people were marked for extinction by order of the Crown. This was not a battle. It was not war. It was an extermination attempt, hidden in plain sight. The Gypsy Camp Massacre remains one of Europe's darkest forgotten crimes. And yet history barely whispers its name.
Welcome to Last Alibi, where lies linger and silence speaks louder than words.
To understand why this atrocity happened, we have to step into the mindset of 18th century Spain. The Romani people, often labeled as gypsies, had lived across Europe for centuries. But prejudice ran deep. They were seen as outsiders, accused of crimes, and blamed for society's problems. By the mid-17th century, Spain's Bourbon monarchy sought to purify its population. To them, the Romani were a problem to be erased. And in secret, plans began to take shape. At dawn, July 30th, 1749, the plan was unleashed. Soldiers fanned out across cities and towns. They carried sealed orders, each commander forbidden to open them until the final hour. And when they did, the command was clear. Arrest every Romani man. Separate them from their wives and children. Send them to forced labor. Forever. This operation would come to be known as La Gran Redada, the Great Gypsy Roundup. Over 12,000 Romani were targeted. Men were shackled and forced into arsenals, shipyards, and mines. Women and children were sent to workhouses, stripped from their families. It was not just mass imprisonment, it was engineered destruction.
For years, the Romani remained imprisoned. Families were shattered, generations scarred. And yet, the massacre is rarely spoken of in Spain's national history. Why? Because in the eyes of the monarchy, it was not a massacre. It was social cleansing. Records show officials believed this plan would erase Romani blood from the Spanish gene pool. But history remembers differently. Today, scholars argue it was one of Europe's earliest attempts at ethnic genocide, decades before the world would even have that word. The Gypsy Camp Massacre was not an accident. It was a calculated act of hatred, carried out by the state against its own people. Thousands of Romani lives were destroyed, and for centuries, their voices have been silenced. But the shadows of that night still linger. In the quiet corners of Spain, in the bloodlines of survivors, in the silence of history books. Crimes like this remind us that evil often hides not in the darkness of criminals, but in the laws of nations.
The Gypsy Camp Massacre teaches us something chilling. When governments turn prejudice into policy, the result is not just injustice, it's annihilation. This has been Last Alibi. If you want more stories that history tried to bury, subscribe and stay with us. The shadows still have secrets to tell.